especially when you're new, a lot of the times you just don't know these things yet. And something I didn't expect about this job. Hi friend, my name is Madeline. If you're new here, I work as a software tester. The job title is manual QA. I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I recently thought of 6 things that I wish I knew before I started. Before I get into the list, I do want to just acknowledge that this job is so specific and it's kind of hard to generalize things because any kind of software you test can be different. The product, even within the same company, the specific things you're testing could make your day-to-day work life so different. But these are 6 kind of more general things that I think are applicable to most manual QA. But just remember that everyone's experience is different. The first thing I wish I knew as a new manual QA is that a lot of people are going to ask you questions you don't know the answer to. When you're in charge of QA, you're testing the software, you're working in some kind of system, you are going to become an expert at a very specific part of the system. And then people are going to turn to you to figure out how it's intended to be used, if something is a bug, what this new feature is, how it interacts with something else. Especially when you're new, a lot of the times you just don't know these things yet because you haven't spent as much time in the system. Depending on how big the software is that you're testing, you may never know all the answers. What you learn to do is have the confidence in yourself that you can find the answer. So you learn how to respond to these questions and tell them, you know, I'll look into that and get back to you. And then you start looking into it. You know at least where to start, and you are gonna work through the testing environment, try to find the answers. You also will use your resources. The longer you're there, you'll know who to reach out to for certain questions. But the most important thing is have confidence that you can find the answer even though you don't know it yet, and it's okay that you don't know it yet. The second thing I wish I knew starting out is that you're going to miss a few bugs. There's gonna be things that you didn't find, and then it's gonna affect real life. It's gonna go live, and it feels terrible in the moment. But first of all, it's not the end of the world. These things happen. When you're new, especially with manual QA, and in my experience, I didn't have any software or technical training before I started. You don't know how code works. You don't know how it's gonna interact. Good code really feels invisible. So you're not the person putting in all this information. You don't know exactly what's pulling from what part of the system. Some things may interact in a way you don't know. One line of code could change something in multiple places. All of this you just learn along the way. So you're gonna miss some things. Just anticipate that. You try your hardest not to, but don't expect to be perfect. The good thing is the longer you do it, you do start to pick up on patterns, and I still don't know any coding languages or anything, but I know a better idea of some of the unexpected places to test. Yeah, you really just pick up on those patterns and you get better at it, but you're not gonna be perfect. Another thing I wish I knew going into QA is how much you need to take ownership of your work and of the product as a whole in order to be really good at this job. Sometimes you might come across something in your testing and then you have a question about it, and it might take several people to answer that question. You know, you'll do your own research first, then maybe you'll go to the developer, you go to someone higher up, a product or project manager, but it might take several people before you get your answer, and it's important that you don't just settle for, oh, well, I didn't know, so I left it. It's better to be nitpicky, that's literally the job. And you have to take that ownership. You have to say, it's up to me to find the answer to this question. It's not up to me to answer the question, but just to present it and the different options, and then see whoever has the authority, see what they want to do. You also have to take ownership because there's a lot of little pieces that go into software and things are gonna be forgotten. So for example, if I find something while I'm testing and I think oh, if we just added this specific thing here, it would make the user experience much better. Maybe I run that by the product manager and they agree, but they're super busy and this is a very small thing. Yes, it would enhance the user experience, but it's a small thing, so it's easy for them to forget it. So if I don't see any action taken on that in maybe a week or 2 or whatever your time frame is for your project, it's up to me to kind of bring that up again and just touch back on it. It's important to keep yourself organized so that you can take that ownership. So I just have a running document of things outstanding and I check on them, and then I will put the date. If I say this is still occurring, I'll just make a note to myself, or if I'm waiting on someone to create an issue for something. And you want to take ownership because you want to be proud of the product as a whole. If you're in quality assurance and you want this to be your career, then it is important that you take pride in whatever product that you're part of making, and you want to advocate for the best version of it. A lot of times, or at least in my experience as QA, it's not up to me to make these decisions. There's someone else who gets paid more to oversee and make decisions, but what I like to think of my job as like just presenting options if we're running through the expectations of a product, and I think of an alternate way that it could function or that it could look, I will present that because I want to advocate for the best version of the product. Whatever decision is made, as long as we have good reasons behind it, I'll stand by that. But I want to take enough ownership that I'm trying to think of new ideas and present them. Number 4, what I wish I knew going into QA is that developers aren't scary. I think I was intimidated by the developers at first, just because when you hear them talk or you see, like a conversation on Teams or something just between developers, again, I have no software background. I don't understand any of it. I don't know what they're talking about. It's very, technical languages. So I think I would see that and then I would feel intimidated because I didn't know how to be a part of that conversation. And I think I was really afraid of asking dumb questions, but the sooner you can get over that, the better. In my experience, getting to know the developers is so important because they're the ones that can help you understand the code. They can inform you on what all to test if it's touching other areas of the system, whether something is possible or not. When you're taking ownership and presenting an idea, maybe it's not possible with the way the code is written, and that's good to know. Just because they have that specialized knowledge doesn't mean they're like above you. Most of them, in my experience, are very happy to like explain and talk about it. You really just have to get to know them, figure out what their style is. Yeah, some people just prefer to totally work alone and they're not going to want to spend a lot of time chatting or like breaking down code, and that's fine because someone else will. So don't be afraid of the developers, get to know them. I think they're your biggest resource. Another thing I wish I knew going into QA is that this job is really all about communication. You need to be able to read written communication, like a lot of kind of technical writing. Depending on the type of project you work on or how things are done at your company, you might have to go through a really long spec where it's giving all the specifics of the new development, or you might be reading lots of little small issues where it breaks it down smaller. But either way, you need to be able to read that, understand it, and respond to it in an efficient manner. You also need to be able to explain things well. So if you're finding a very specific bug, whether you're better like verbally, so you just like have a Zoom meeting or you work in person or something, or if you're good at writing it out and you can just write it in a Teams message or an email, being able to explain what's happening, where it's happening, what's affected is so important because you lose a lot of time if your messages are very vague and ambiguous or just aren't fully fleshed out. I think one skill that I've learned over time is when I find something wrong, a bug or just something we need to fix, I'm gonna take a little bit of time before I reach out about that, assuming it's not like something's on fire, assuming it's just like a normal type of bug. I'm gonna take the time to research it, figure out as much information as I can. That way we don't waste time going back and forth with the devs asking me these questions that I could have already answered myself. Like, is there some kind of, error log? Where is it happening? Does it happen on every like permissioning level? So many specific things. So finding all that specific information and then crafting a message to present that in like the clearest, most concise way is, I think, an invaluable skill for a QA tester to have. And the 6th thing I wish I knew before I started this job, and something I didn't expect about this job, but sometimes doing a good job means feeling like you're making everyone else's lives harder. The whole point of this job as QA is to nitpick, to be thorough, to try to break something, all in an effort to find something that someone else is then gonna have to fix. So as much as you want to get handed this code change and you test it and everything goes well, it's super smooth, super fast, which happens a lot. The whole reason for QA is that it doesn't happen like that all the time. I'm definitely someone who doesn't want to inconvenience other people, so you kind of have to get over that in this job. Do the best job you can as far as finding as much helpful information as possible. Like I said, that helps like counteract that feeling when I can at least make it easy for them to find the problem, but even that's not always possible. It's the nature of the work. This is why it is so important to have a good relationship with your developers and take ownership. As QA, at the end of the day, what the job is finding things that are wrong or could be improved, telling someone, hey, this was a mistake here, we need to fix this. And by we need to fix this, it's them. I don't have the ability to fix it. So that's why it's super important to build that relationship with your developers so that they know where you're coming from. They know you're like, on their side, just trying to help them out, and celebrate the wins as much as possible. I know some people might get excited when they find a bug because like that is what the job is. But on the other side of that, it's just really important to be, self-aware that the more bugs you find, the more work for someone else. And that just is the job. All in all, working in QA has been a great experience for me. It's not somewhere I ever saw myself, which I think is how most people end up in QA. It's not usually something people have a degree in. I actually left the job back in May and I'm back now about 6 months later, and I plan on this being my long-term career. There's definitely a learning curve, but I think it's a job where you can do a lot of good, take pride in creating a really good product. Yeah, that's my experience with it. If you have any thoughts, leave them down below. I would love to hear them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.